Hello there, friends. Welcome back. I'm so glad to be here with you again and share another inspiring conversation today. Few people have been as impactful in my personal and professional evolution as today's guest has. Chef Mark Reinfeld and I dig into the many layers of veganism, including the often less discussed parts that can seem radical at first, but actually make perfect sense. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Plate. I am here with Mark Reinfeld. He is an award-winning chef, educator, authority on plant-based cuisine. Chef Mark has over 25 years experience preparing innovative vegan and raw food cuisine. He has written 8 acclaimed books. Wow, Mark, 8 acclaimed books. And conducts virtual and in-person culinary training around the world. Chef Mark's mission is to help create a sustainable future for humanity by training others in the art of plant-based cuisine for our health, the planet, and for a more peaceful world. He has served, fed, and educated both celebrity and less-known plant enthusiasts, including myself. I'm honored to welcome Chef Mark to the conversation today. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, Sarah, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to see you.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome, welcome. I'm so excited that you agreed to meet with me today. I've spoken your praises many times over the years by people that I have had in my own kitchen doing my own culinary trainings, and everybody wants to know, how it started and where it began for me. And it started with you, actually, in your kitchen experiences. So it's
cool.
really, it's come a long way. Did you ever think back when you started your journey that you would have literally influenced thousands of people as you have?
I guess I never thought of it beforehand. I knew that at some point I realized this is what I wanted to do with my life, and a sense of purpose, and kind of tuning in and asking what my mission is, and it's led me to this. So it's cool to see. I love hearing your story and the connections you've made through the trainings I've done. It's very fulfilling. I appreciate hearing about it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you've been instrumental in my journey, that's for sure. I can remember my own journey starting off as just sort of clunky in regards to finding my way through the kitchen, certainly from a plant-based standpoint. And coming across an advertisement, I think in Veg News magazine is how I initially found you, and just said, hey, this sounds like a fun weekend, a culinary immersive experience. So took a trip to Madison.
Yeah,
was the first one I attended. And
I think you came with your mom also.
I did. Yes, my mom. Yes, we both joined that weekend's experience and then loved it so much that we continued on to another one, and then I went to another one. So yeah, your influence in both our lives has been amazing, and we've really enjoyed your recipes and sharing them with other people as well.
Cool. I love hearing that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for you and all your amazing work. Can you speak a little bit on your own journey and what it is that it was for you? Why did you find yourself on this path of plant-based lifestyle?
That's a great question. Initially, growing up, I had planned to go to law school and be a lawyer. I actually went to NYU Law School for a semester. And before that, I had traveled a year through Paris, worked as an au pair in Paris, and hitchhiked from Amsterdam to Berlin, and got there when the wall opened up, and traveled down through Prague during the revolution, and went on to a kibbutz in Israel, where I started connecting with animals in a way that I hadn't before, and just feeling the same love for a cow and a chicken that I felt for a dog or a cat. And that's when I became vegetarian on the kibbutz there. And then I went to India and Nepal and did the Mount Everest trek. And India was vegetarian friendly. And in Nepal, on the trail, you would meet these little go through these villages, and there'd be like baby sheep and just people living kind of in harmony more with the animals. And so that helped me become more solidified. And when I came back home, I went to law school for a semester, but then realized that wasn't the path that I wanted to take. So I packed up my bags and moved out to San Diego and started working in a health food store called Jimbo's out there. And that's when I had always loved cooking as a child. And my grandfather was a renowned chef and ice carver in the 50s who was carving ice till his dying days in his 80s from a wheelchair with an oxygen tank and a chainsaw, like a very strong, colorful character. So I had that culinary influence. And so my vegetarianism at the time led to veganism when I learned more about the environmental impact and how animals were treated on even just in the dairy and egg industries. And so my whole commercial career, which started like in the early 90s, has been plant-based. Vegetarian initially for a few months maybe, but essentially vegan since the mid 90s.
Wow. So a true pioneer in the vegan movement. You were certainly, we talked about Chef Liz a little bit before, and, her and I had spoke about the pioneers of this movement, of the vegan movement, and you're certainly one of them. I mean, when you first initiated your path, you probably couldn't even find basic ingredients, and you can go to most any store now and find what you need.
Yeah, it was a little more tricky then. And it's funny because I look to the people who came before me, like John Robbins was an influence for me, and Chef Ron Pekarsky, who was the first vegan to win the Culinary Olympics. So it's yeah, it's a very interesting story that goes all the way back to Pythagoras and ancient India. So
yeah, I mean,
history.
veganism has been part of our world forever to a certain degree, right? But in terms of how it has popularized itself in the last couple of decades, where you could never go out to eat anywhere.
Right.
That was never an option. To find even soy milk, it was some far off health food store, and it was like $20 or something crazy. So by pioneer, I mean, I know that there was certainly many that, have come before both of us and that, but people like yourself have normalized it and really made it more mainstream and household name and knowledge, so to speak.
Yeah, it seems like it's definitely taken on way more traction over even the last 5 years or so. It seems like things are accelerating.
What do you think has been the reason for that?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is fueled by just the mounting health and medical evidence surrounding a plant-based diet and lifestyle, as far as addressing like some of the big concerns like heart disease and high cholesterol and diabetes and certain forms of cancer. I think that's becoming fueled in the medical community, and just also the awareness of climate change and the environmental movement focusing on the impact that humans have on their environment. And it doesn't take too long looking down that path to realize that animal agriculture is up there, if not the number one concern as far as sustainability and environmental preservation. So I think that's growing. And also there's more awareness of how animals on factory farms are being treated through undercover videos and other organizations that are, and a lot of the movies coming out that show the impact of how these animals are actually treated. So I think it's beginning to really sink in that this is really an optimal way for us to feed ourselves for our health, and also to create like a future for humanity and just be kinder to animals too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All those things just, I'm sure are feeding the movement, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah.
There's also something that has been talked about, and I feel like I've talked to you about this before too, in regards to energy received from the food you eat when you're consuming animals that have been violently killed.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
I personally, this may seem a little radical, but I do feel that like the energy we bring out into the world gets reflected back to us, and that I feel like the personally, like the amount of violence and kind of misunderstanding, a lot of that, if we cultivated a deeper sense of compassion for animals and how we fed ourselves, that would also extend to how humans are treated. And so personally, that's my own personal philosophy, just like the path of nonviolence, and that's been promoted and extolled by everyone from Gandhi to Bob Marley to Martin Luther King as like a solution to the issues that we're facing in the world. To me, that those issues are associated with how we treat animals, and that if we could bring more kindness and compassion into our everyday lives through our food choices, I feel that will be reflected in more compassion towards each other and the planet personally.
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. Sort of with so much going on in our society right now that has so much hateful energy associated with it. And it is something that I think about if people were eating a more compassionate diet and thinking about things in a more compassionate way as it pertained to the food on their plate and the way animals are treated around us, be it our companion animals or animals that we raise for food. Would we also switch our mindset on other types of things in our society that spew hate as well? Anything from the current political situation to racism to women empowerment issues. I wonder if that would be different if people had a different mindset in regards to compassion for food and with food.
Well, I think Albert Einstein would agree with you in saying that he's saying in order for there to be like survival on the planet, it's like extending that circle of compassion out from us into the world. So I think when that's something that we could all, meditate on to try to do that better. And I try to do that as much as possible as well.
Mm-hmm. Food, I think, I know for myself at least, and I think probably for you as well, is your activism. It's a way to try to connect with people in a less aggressive way to show them a more compassionate path or a more healthful path. There's so many ways, so many avenues that people find themselves on this journey, and so many ways that they're influenced to find their way onto this journey. And for me, I know it has always been feeding people, showing them that they don't have to give up anything, essentially, that they're used to. They don't have to compromise on, the things that they've loved for their whole life. They can veganize it.
Yeah.
Is that true for you?
Definitely, that I feel that way exactly, and that I do use that word as activism. I used to be a lot more of an in-your-face activist and doing veal crate fasts and more like in your face like vegan activism. And then I decided that I feel like showing people how to make vegan food taste good and feeding them vegan food that tastes good, like you mentioned, is a form of activism because it helps people improve their health. And like you said, if there's no sacrifice involved, we could talk all day about why it's important to eat plant-based, but if people aren't able to have the food taste good, it's really not going to go very far. So I think that chefs and culinary educators have the opportunity to really help impact humanity by showing them these techniques and introducing ingredients to show like you don't have to sacrifice anything. It's better for your health. It's a more sustainable way for humanity, and also it involves less cruelty to animals. I think when you make the food taste good and you can eliminate all those barriers, it goes a long way.
Absolutely. It brings to mind an interview that I somebody just interviewed me and about on another podcast essentially, and they were talking about, missing things like bacon that, people kind of obsess over, or, certain types of animal foods, tasting different than a plant-based version. And I brought up the point to them that not to be too graphic about it, but the bacon or the pot roast are not cut off the animal tasting like that, right? You season them, you cure them, you marinate them. Same with plants. So there really is no compromise as long as you're willing to just spend time in your kitchen.
Definitely. Yep. And all those things then, and that's where I know it's controversial, but some of those products, you could definitely make your own versions of them, but like we talked about, it's never been easier to access a full range of those plant-based alternatives. And even though they may not be the healthiest food around, I like to look at them as transitional foods that can help you make a transition towards more of a whole foods plant-based diet. So I'm definitely a big fan of any of those foods that help people overcome those barriers and feel like I can have a satiating meal that reminds me of the meals I grew up with and family traditions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely a place for even the highly processed vegan options on the market, because they do bridge a gap for people in transition, especially, or being able to just show up at a barbecue for a holiday weekend, 4th of July coming up type of thing. It normalizes what you're doing on your path. I also tell people in my own kitchen when I'm instructing them is be open to it being different, but delicious, but even more delicious. It's okay if something isn't exactly the same. Don't try to duplicate it. But just be open to it being delicious anyways.
That's great. I like that. That's wonderful.
So I really push that a lot, and people seem to embrace that, and it breaks some barriers down of trying to compare and compete, I guess.
Totally. Yeah.
Although
it's extremely satisfying to me when people don't know that it's plant-based, like even things like making a tempeh meatball. And I was at a friend's and I made some for him, and it was in the pot, and his wife came home and she would never eat a vegan meatball, and he asked her, I had left, so that gave it away that I was there, but she asked where it was from, and he said the Italian deli downstairs, and she ate all of it and loved it, and then found out it wasn't meat. And that definitely is satisfying when you could get it to that level.
That is so satisfying. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that just is like, the cherry on top of things, when it can be delicious and healthy, and it's, something that passes for. I think that's great. I think that's fantastic. I experience that with cakes that I make. Totally. I still work in the savory aspect of vegan foods too, but cakes have really become a thing for me. And I mean, I have just as many vegan clients as I do omni clients, and it's just because they enjoy it, and doesn't taste like, cardboard, I guess. So
cool.
That's great when that can happen. What would you think are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about veganism or vegan food?
I think that there's still a lot of the vegan food is bland and not satisfying. Like they'll always be hungry if they're vegan, and that they're not going to have satiating meals would be, I think, still a misconception that's becoming more of a thing of the past, but there's still that. And then also that it's somehow complicated to prepare vegan foods as well, or it's going to take a long time. That's why I like doing the 30-minute vegan books, just to demonstrate that it can be super quick and easy. So that's another, I'd say those are two big ones. And another one is probably that it's too expensive, and that one, it just depends on where you're sourcing your ingredients. And like if you look to purchase things in bulk and look at grains and beans and ways to kind of do batch cooking, that you can find that it's it's actually less expensive a lot of times than like an omni diet.
Yes, I would agree. I always have this brought up in my kitchen as well, people claiming that they can't afford veganism. And
Mhm,
I just come back with Whole Foods is a great place, but I probably go there a couple times a year. Most
mhm,
everything I can purchase is at a regular grocery store
yeah,
and is
yeah.
not, an oddity or anything. Because if you're eating a whole plant foods diet, right? If
Mhm.
you're past the transitional point, especially of the
Mock meat.
impossible meats, yeah,
Yeah.
mock meats, impossible or beyond, those are all great and they all have their place, absolutely. But if you're sort of celebrating the plant itself
Mhm.
now,
Yeah.
then there's no like special shopping that needs to be done for that.
Right. Except for
um
nutritional yeast. You have to find your way
Nutritional
to the
use, yeah. I
nutritional
mean, but even
yeast.
that's readily available. I mean,
Yep.
that's something that you can get. I mean, at least in the grocery stores by me. I mean, I'm in probably the one of the least non-friendly vegan places in the country.
Mhm.
Um, Northwest Indiana
Right.
is that neck of the woods. And even here, you can pretty much go to the regular grocery stores and get 99% of what you need. So it's
Yep.
super impressive.
Definitely.
Again, I'm just so, amazed by how far things have come, even just since I participated in your courses.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
even then it was
Definitely.
just so much harder, so much harder. And regarding your courses, talk to me a little bit about those and your journey with them and how they've evolved, how you now include your wife in
Mhm.
these immersions and teachings that you offer.
Thanks for asking. I start 2010. We had a restaurant in Kauai called the Blossoming Lotus that we closed in 2008. And around 2010, I started offering these longer 10-day chef trainings that I offered around the world, and would be all through Hawaii and through the States. And then I started offering 5-day trainings, and the goal for those was really to give people an immersion, to give them a lot of the core techniques regarding plant-based and raw food cuisine. So I developed the 10-day and the 5-day, and then also developed a teacher training where I would train students on the art of conducting a cooking class or demonstration in their community, and just go over all the ins and outs and fielding questions and things like that. And again, the idea, like the form of activism for me, that the ancient Chinese proverb of giving a person a block of tofu and feeding them for a day, or showing them how to roast the tofu and feeding them for a lifetime. So empowering the students to go out into their community and teach others how easy it is to prepare, again, fueled like that sense of activism for me. And now I've developed it's a 4-week culinary immersion that it's all virtual, that involves 4 hours a day with me in the kitchen in a small group setting. It's turned out to be an amazing format, and where everyone's really getting a lot out of it. There's a lot of give and take, and my goal is just to really work as close to one-on-one with people as I can to help them advance in their culinary journey, wherever that may be, whether they want to then pursue a longer culinary training at a professional culinary school, or want to dive in and go right into the plant-based culinary world. I offer weekly coaching sessions with each student just to really tune into what they're looking for, what their next chapter in their life is with this in mind. So that's been the core training. It's approved by the American Culinary Federation for 120 continuing education credit hours. So people that are looking to become like a personal chef through the ACF and need C credits, then that's an option. That's one of the core programs that I'm doing. And then also my wife, Ashley Bude, is a vegan naturopathic doctor, and we have something called the Doctor and the Chef. And so we've been in the past offered like wellness weekends in person, and we've had sponsorship with natural grocers here, where we would do store tours and demos in the community. And now what we're doing. It's a 6-part series called Nourish Your Life Through Food. And Ashley shares kind of naturopathic principles and the elevator pitch kind of nutritional knowledge that you need to support a decision. And I go over like the core techniques and tips and tricks that I've learned over the years on how to help make the food taste good. And so we just launched that last week, and it's in process now, that six-part series.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite the evolution of what you offer. And that's just amazing that you can do it virtually now too.
Yeah, it's been really, that was really satisfying and fulfilling. There's people are from all over the country who are taking the classes, and it's just great to be able to reach people in this format. We're doing things virtually before COVID, but now people are much more open and receptive to doing things virtually in the kitchen, and it's been a format that's worked out great. So we're really happy with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I have found that too, that people are, even more receptive of online courses and educational things than ever before. I guess it's maybe the only thing we have to thank COVID for, potentially. Because it does expand our outreach, right? I mean, so there is that. It's a great way to influence further and serve further. I know for myself, when I'm speaking about how I might be able to serve people, it's more than just physically. It's influencing them to embrace wherever they are on their own path, and I know it's true for myself, and you've said it for your courses. Everybody from, the meat and potato omni to the raw vegan, and anybody in between is welcome to participate in your courses. It's for everybody.
Yeah, I like to say the vegan police are never present in any of my classes. I think everyone just we're all at where we're at. And I just like to show people that if you do decide you want to include more plant-based foods in your diet, there's a way to do so, like you mentioned, without sacrificing anything on flavor or satiation, and you get maximize the nutrition and all the other benefits come with it. So it's whether it's once a week or once a month or every day or doing a vegan challenge, however you look at it, every little bit, I think the more plants that we can include, the better off we are.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree with you. So, and the same is true for influence, whether yourself are influencing literally thousands and thousands of people all the time, to people that are newly vegan and might share a recipe with their grandparents or something. It's like that one, that little bit of influence, and just planting that seed to make somebody think about maybe doing something a little bit differently, or, oh, I didn't know that could be delicious that way, or maybe I don't need to have the animal product on my plate tonight. This plant is satisfying enough.
Right.
So just those types of things, and you just never know who might be listening and what might resonate with them.
Yep, definitely.
And I definitely felt that in your courses, that it was a no police zone in regards to vegan police. There were no judgments passed. There were, nobody saying that this is wrong or that's wrong. It was all just try this instead type of approach, or have you ever thought of that type of mentality versus no, you're wrong type of thing. So
it's just, I think just like kind of keeping it around, like making the food taste good. And, most people want to have meals that taste good. So it kind of unites people.
It does. It certainly does. And, another thing that brings to mind, that unites people, is just the energy that you bring to the kitchen. That's another thing that I took away from my experiences with you, was bringing a certain type of vibe or energy to the food that you create. It's an entirely different feeling serving that and having somebody else enjoy that when it's brought in that type of light versus begrudgingly.
Yeah, that's another kind of core thing. I like to create like a calm and peaceful environment in the kitchen, which is usually not the descriptive adjectives of a commercial kitchen, but I feel like if you just could like leave your cares at the door and just be in the present moment and be mindful of like the
Yes.
vegetables and holding the knife and the experience and the cutting, the sound, the smell, the flavors, the scents that are coming out, you know,
Mhm.
you could really get into like a good headspace. Even as a child, I think that's what drew me to cooking, was it helped me calm me down. And so I think people could tell the difference between like your grandmother putting all her love into something she makes, or like a sandwich you pick up at the gas station, like that love and appreciation, I feel like comes through. And so I like encouraging people to cultivate that as well.
Absolutely. It's almost a meditative state.
Mm,
There's a lot of different ways that can be done, right? And traditionally is great, but meditative also in the manner of just being present in what you're creating,
mhm.
especially if it's for somebody else's enjoyments, because
Yeah,
you're passing that energy and peaceful mindset onto them.
yeah, yeah. What was that movie, like Water for Chocolate or something, where whatever emotions she was experiencing, if she was crying while she was cooking the food, people were crying when
Yeah.
they were eating it. You know, I do think there's some truth to that.
Yeah. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier with the animal feeling what's happening to them and that
Mm,
energy being put onto your plate and
yeah.
then you consuming that.
Yep.
There's a lot of question about whether that transition has anything to do with the emotions and feelings that people are often working through. It's
Yeah.
like I don't think it's far-fetched to say it starts on your plate.
Yeah, I think there could be a lot of truth to that, especially like because there's things like the stress hormones that are released that are they're actually chemically changing the composition of the food itself through like those
Mhm.
hormones. And so I think that it could be, you know, that definitely could be a factor.
Yeah, I don't think it's far-fetched at all to think that, but it is a little bit, hard for people to believe, especially those that have not quite even found themselves thinking about a plant-based journey.
Hmm. Yep, there's a lot more going on than we're aware of, is what I would say.
Absolutely.
And we're still learning, and that we're really just at the very beginning stages of fully understanding even the nutritional side of things, but and then not to mention like more of these subtle type of issues, you know.
Definitely. Um, Mark, if it were up to you, what would any non-vegan have to try? What would you like to introduce to anybody that has not tried vegan or plant-based food?
I would say there's probably no one who has not tried it. They've just don't
Well,
realize that they've
right.
tried it. So
That's true.
the
But
salsa,
officially,
the salsa and guacamole they had with their meal, or
yes.
you know, there's lots of ways that like the plant-based food can sneak in. You realize that you're eating a lot more plant-based than you may realize. But I mean, for me getting started, there's a few things like having a really good plant-based smoothie, I think is a good way for you to get with like some superfood add-ons to feel
Mhm.
like what kind of nutrition and energy is possible from eating plant-based, becoming more creative with salads, so adding even beans and nuts and seeds, and look and try out some new ingredients and just get a little more creative with salads to break out of like the salad box. And then also like experimenting with global spice blends and cuisines, because that opens up a lot. If you have like a Mexican, Italian, Cajun, herb de Provence, all these blends, you could
Mhm.
really create a whole array of the plant-based food very easily, get a sense of like global cuisine with that. And then I would say if you wanted to, it could take trial and error to find a version that you like. But if you love bacon cheeseburgers, there's ways that you can make like an awesome plant-based bacon cheeseburger. And when you have that experience of like having that really same, feeling of satiation and connection, that's another eye opener, I think, for people. And I've seen that so many times where I've fed those types of foods at a barbecue or something like that, or Miyoko's cheese platters that are plant-based cheeses. Those are good eye-opening experiences.
Definitely. I recently just cracked the code on vegan bacon.
Oh, cool. What's your secret?
It's eggplant based, actually. Yeah, over the years I tried so many different ways of creating it, and I've never found a commercially purchased one that really met my standards.
Yeah.
And I've tried everything from tempeh to tofu to rice paper. And I had tried eggplant before, bacon, and it just, for whatever reason, recently though, I created it, I dehydrated it,
Oh,
and
sweet.
it was just like life-changing. I was like,
Oh,
BLTs,
awesome.
yes.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So the recipe's on my Instagram. Take a look at
Oh,
that if you're
nice.
interested. Yeah. So definitely share when I find something amazing. I share it, even if it's just in an Instagram post. I want to put it out there so everybody else can enjoy it too.
Cool.
So yeah, that was super satisfying to find that. But mostly at this point, I'm 12 plus years into my journey, so I don't necessarily feel like I need meat replacements anymore.
Yeah.
That's not really a huge thing, but every once in a while, like I said, I wanted a BLT, I wanted something like that.
Right.
And I'm like, you know what, there's got to be a way to meet my standards with this thing created, and
Cool.
I figured it out.
That's wonderful. That's great to hear.
Yeah. So I'll be hopefully sharing that in the future in a more official way. But Mark, does anything stand out to you in regards to experiences you might have had in the kitchen or when speaking to people about veganism? Have you ever had a moment with somebody where either you or they had some type of like aha moment and something just clicked?
That's a really good question. I think sometimes there's just like that connection people make of like when they realize that's like doable,
Yeah.
like it's something that's doable, and people that have done like a 30-day vegan challenge and they're just like, this is so doable, I feel so much better, it's like not a struggle, I'm just going to keep doing it, and that's really cool, those types of connections.
Do you feel like people have had, at least from experiences that they've told you about, better luck, or maybe luck's not the right word, but better outcomes with switching what they're doing overnight or making gradual changes?
I think I've probably heard about half and half.
Yeah.
I would say half the people, it was like, I saw a movie, like one of my students, he was a firefighter for like 30 years and he found out he had diabetes, and he was in Taiwan. He read the book, The China Study, called his wife and said, we're going vegan, and then got off all his medication. And like, I have a lot of stories like that of people that was just like, I saw this movie, I'm done, I'll figure it out, and that's what I'm doing. And then other people, like you said, it's kind of more of a gradual, like slowly, that they could go, days or weeks without eating all plant-based, and then that period just extends, and maybe they still don't call themselves vegan or plant-based because maybe the next day they'll have something, but it's a longer and longer period of time.
Yeah. As you would describe it, what is the difference between vegan versus plant-based?
Another great question. People use the term plant-based kind of loosely. I mean, when I say plant-based, I mean plant-based as opposed to animal-based, not like based on plants with the addition of X, Y, and Z. That I would call like pescatarian if there's, if it's fish, or flexitarian if it's meat every now and then. Vegan for me embodies like the lifestyle more. It represents, you could say vegan diet and vegan foods, but in general, I think the word vegan has come to be associated with embracing the whole lifestyle, whereas plant-based, you could eat plant-based and still not be vegan. So that's how I would describe it.
Right. Yeah, I think I agree with that completely. I tend to use the terms interchangeably, quite honestly. I don't know. I know that there's a difference, but
I use them interchangeably as well, just for the sake of not saying vegan 10 times or plant-based 10 times.
All right. Well, if you're doing it, then it's okay. Then I'm doing it right. That's fine. We'll go with that. I think that's a good that's a good opinion. If Mark's doing it, then it's fine. But I have, like you said, you described it as being more pescatarian, but I feel like there is a little bit more of a transition in that plant-based description, where people are now utilizing it in a way to describe a mostly plant-based meal as,
Right.
oh, it's plant-based. But
Yeah.
so I think, unfortunately, I think that confuses people sometimes, especially people in transition, where they might, see something on a menu or on a label that says
Right.
plant-based.
Yeah.
And really it's, there's milk in it, or there's egg
Yeah.
in it, and, things that don't come from plants are essentially
Right.
in it. And that can be
Yeah.
misguiding.
Yeah, some people say like plant forward or plant strong or something like that.
I think at the end of the day, though, I do applaud the effort to put more plants on your plate. So if that's where people are in their journey, I still think it's progress in the right direction. I just wish
Definitely.
it could be, I just hope it's not said in a way that is trying to misguide or be deceptive. Like I said,
Yeah.
that can be a little bit challenging.
Right.
Mark, tell us a little bit about, I know that we talked about your courses and some upcoming projects. Can you tell us a little bit about what you see for yourself and your collaboration with Ashley in what you plan to do moving forward with the way you serve and feed people?
That's a great question. We're planning on building upon what we're offering now. And consulting has been a big part of what I've done over the years. I've offered a lot of like chef trainings and menu and recipe development and plant-based challenges in different kind of corporate settings as well. So expanding, we're looking to build more focus on the virtual aspect of things now, and working to kind of create, we're getting a lot of input from doctors and medical institutions about wanting to really help get this into like the mainstream medical system. The idea of like empowering patients to prepare healthy plant-based foods as even a cost saving measure, because as you know, like treating something like heart disease or diabetes or high cholesterol, there's a huge medical cost associated with that. So if in the medical system, it can be demonstrated that the more people are embracing a plant-based lifestyle, the less of these massive medical costs the hospital systems are incurring. That's definitely an area of focus that we're putting energy into. And it's interesting, one of the first, even back in, I believe it might have been like the late 90s as well, 1998, I went and made a presentation for a hospital in Chicago about offering more plant-based options. So I think there's much more receptivity now, even in like kind of corporate mainstream hospital world, about the importance of this. So I think that's like another, if it were Star Trek, that would be like the next frontier for me, like getting into like that realm for real, where people are, these major hospital systems are making that connection.
That is work I look forward to seeing from you, because that would be such a level up and such a step forward in the progress of just the world, for hospitals to actually be feeding healthy food, heart healthy food to their patients in a way to actually promote wellness, right? Rather than just medicating. I don't recall the genius that originally said it. Maybe you do, but food is thy medicine, medicine is thy food.
That was Hippocrates, so
Yeah.
the father of modern medicine, and that we like to say like the future of medicine is returning to the origins of medicine, which was like what Hippocrates said about at least food being our primary method. It's not going to cure everything, but a
Right.
lot can be cured with it. And then once you see the impact that appropriate food choices could have on your health, then you could work on other issues, and still, pharmaceuticals and surgery and all that plays a role. It's not, I don't think, like all of a sudden everyone just eats good food and there's no medical issues, but I think it would help immensely.
Yes. And it's a discussion for a different time because it's a huge rabbit hole to go down. But when you start talking about why we have as a society haven't embraced that type of culture at this point, it's a money game, right? There's a lot of money involved in why we haven't made choices to better feed ourselves, especially from the standpoint of what doctors and medical professionals are promoting, because it conflicts with other industries like the pharmaceutical industry.
Yep. I have some firsthand experiences with that.
So, and I know that's an in-depth conversation, probably, longer than what you have time for me today. But it's important for people to understand that aspect of it too, just because the FDA has said, or, the different organizations have said things like milk does a body good, it doesn't necessarily mean it's true, right? I mean, we need to look deeper into those
Right.
notions of who's saying that and
Yep.
why those people are saying that.
Definitely.
Do you have any comments on that?
I think it's just that humans are complicated creatures and that there's a lot of like things can be, as a philosophy major, like there's all these different levels at which you could view that. And I think there's part of people that are in those positions that they're motivated to help create the healthy outcome, and then there's also kind of survival level impulses, and where people are looking at like I know a hospital that these doctors wanted to do plant-based cooking classes at, and they were kind of an alternative system, and they said, well, that's great, except this main supplement that we provide has whey in it, and so we're not comfortable with you doing vegan cooking classes there. So there's, even if they might think that it's better to eat more plant-based, there's this practical concern involved in trying to meet their expenses and hit revenue targets, things like that. So it's a pretty complicated phenomena, I
Yes,
think.
it is a complicated moving machine that people like yourself are really making leaps and bounds and slowing. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Mark, if there's something that you wanted to leave our listeners with, something that you wanted to tell people who are starting a vegan path, or even just those that have embraced a path, what would you leave them with? What thought?
Just, I would say it's a lot easier than you may think it is, and just to keep trying, and just like the three main important things to do are practice, practice, and practice. And just like we talked about earlier, I think people having a gentle attitude towards themselves as they're learning and not beat themselves up. And I share in my classes, which you refer to, the story about keeping a positive attitude in the kitchen. If you make like a mistake that, or seemingly mistake, or something doesn't turn out the way you'd like it to, just one of my friends, his friend won a world-class handball tournament, and when he asked him how did you win, he said, when I made a shot, I said good shot, and when I missed a shot, I said nice try. So he was just like, good shot, nice try, good shot, nice try, good shot, good shot. He wasn't like beating himself up for the missed shots. So I think that's really good to keep in mind. I like talking about like the mindset for success in the kitchen. And I think that that's like an important part of it.
That's fantastic. The grace that you allow yourself and allow other people is phenomenal. It really is. And I think that's why you are where you are, because you just have allowed yourself the time for error and the
Mm,
time for success, and just to practice, practice, practice. Like you said, there is no, there's no end zone of it. There's
right.
just keep going, no matter what, just keep going.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, Mark, thank
Great.
you for your time today. I have just loved this conversation with you. And, just know that you have been a complete catalyst in my own journey and all the
Mm,
things that I have done, everything from courses to my storefront to what I'm doing now with putting just information out in the world. You've really been somebody that has, whether physically or just in the back of my mind, guided my path. And what would
mm.
Mark do? What would Mark
Oh,
think about that?
that's so
So,
sweet, Sarah.
yeah, you've really been part of my journey. You're
Thank
really,
you.
really and truly. So, I
That means
definitely
a lot to me. Thank you.
I definitely steer people to you regularly. Your books are phenomenal. Anybody that, especially, the busy people that feel like they have no time, your 30-minute vegan book series is something that everybody should have on their shelves and
Mm.
open on their countertops, just creating from, because it is just an amazing tool to making it easy and making it something that is achievable and sustainable every single day.
Yep,
So
that's the key.
thank you for your crafts, and thank you for
Thank.
all that you're putting out into the
Mm,
world. And to you, Chef Mark, I say
mm.
keep going, because what you're doing is making a difference in
Mm.
thousands, probably millions of people's lives every day.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. That means so much to me. It's wonderful to see you, and let's stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Thank
Take
you.
care. Thank you.
I could literally talk to Chef Mark all day long. I hope you loved this conversation as much as I did. Here were my top takeaways today. 1. Reducing medical costs via the way of plant-based diets and reminding ourselves that the origins of medicine is in fact plants. 2. Leave your cares at the door and create mindfulness in your kitchens. 3. Practice, practice, and more practice. There are no fails. Keep the good shot, nice try approach to things and just keep going. Please learn more about Chef Mark and opportunities to create with him at his website listed in the show notes, chefmarkreinfeld.com. Follow him on social media and be sure to share this episode and tag us both. We'd love if you left us a comment on what resonated with you today and what you will start putting into practice to fuel a more peaceful world. It literally all starts with what's on your plate. Until next time, loves.